I think I know what Taylor Sheridan's next Yellowstone prequel, after 1923, is about. I think I know what Taylor Sheridan's next Yellowstone prequel could be about after 1923 Season 2. Jacob, Harrison Ford, and Cara Dutton's Helen Mirren family face a grave loss when Jack Dutton, Darren Mann, dies in 1923 Season 2, Episode 6. Jack meets an ill fate as the Dutton family's range war breaks out, with Vanner Creighton's Jerome Flynn, men killing a key member of Jacob's family. Abandoning orders to guard his aunt, Jack's impulsive actions contributed to the list of horrible things that happened to Elizabeth Strafford, Michelle Randolph. Meanwhile, Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklenar, is almost home, just a train ride away from Bozeman and the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch. It's been enthralling to watch Spencer make it back to Montana. The same is true for Spencer's wife, and she's been amazing to watch despite the worst things happening to Alexandra Dutton, Julia Schlapfer. If the couple reunites in the finale, it will be a joyous and memorable conclusion. The reunion could also set up the events of 1944, Sheridan's teased Dutton prequel, especially in the fallout of Jack Dutton's death, which leaves Liz a widow. 1944 is the next Dutton family prequel teased by Taylor Sheridan. The story would presumably follow the next generation of the Dutton family, conveniently picking up 20 years after 1923 ended. Elizabeth Strafford and Alexandra Dutton are both pregnant as 1923 Season 2's finale nears. If both mothers have their children, their offspring will be about 20 years old in 1944. That would make the next generation the perfect age to anchor the Yellowstone story. Considering Jack's fate will massively impact his wife and family, the next story could be about how that plays out down the road. There's been a lot of talk about whether John Dutton IE's, Kevin Costner, father John Dutton II, Downey Coleman, is Jack or Spencer's son. While Jack's death could have made Spencer John Dutton IE's grandfather, perhaps there's another explanation, and John Dutton II could still be Elizabeth and Jack's son. After the family's range war, Elizabeth might return to Boston, eventually sending her son to live on his family's ranch as he becomes an adult. Therefore, 1944 could be about John Dutton II making his way home to the Yellowstone, where he would have grown up without his father's death. While Taylor Sheridan's 1944 prequel is likely about the 1923 characters after the Prohibition era and the Great Depression, it's unlikely the actors will reprise their roles as Spencer, Alexandra, and Elizabeth, respectively. Taking place 20 years in the future, 1944 would likely recast the roles to adequately portray the time that had passed, better positioning the characters and story in time. That means since Taylor Sheridan previously said 1923 would only have 2 seasons, 1923 Season 2 could be the last we see of Alex and Spencer's love story from Julia Schlapfer and Brandon Sklenar. However, the 1923 characters could still feature in 1944. Flashbacks to the family's earlier memories are a significant part of the neo-Western franchise, helping to fill out the details of John Dutton's family in Yellowstone and James Dutton's, Tim McGraw, 1883 family. 1944 could similarly feature flashbacks to 1923's characters, featuring actors like Sklenar to paint a complete picture of what happened at the Dutton Ranch over the previous 2 decades. That way, we could get the sense of a new era for the Dutton family while still enjoying the brilliant performances from 1923's actors, particularly Spencer, Alex, and Elizabeth. Taylor Sheridan has a knack for peeling back the gritty layers of American history and family legacy, spinning gold from the dust and blood of the American West. We've seen it in 1883, a heartbreaking tale of sacrifice and manifest destiny, and 1923, A brutal reminder of generational resilience amid economic despair and cultural upheaval. But if you follow the breadcrumbs he's left scattered through the Dutton saga, you'll see the shadow of another era calling. A time not just of change, but of transformation. And I think I know what's next. A Yellowstone prequel set in 1944. Why 1944? Because this isn't just about the Duttons surviving another rough patch. This is about the Duttons confronting modernity head-on, while the world around them is literally at war. Imagine this. America is deep in the throes of World War II. Half the country is overseas fighting Hitler. The other half is working double shifts to keep the nation running. But what about Montana? What about the vast, wind-scored plains where cattle still roam and the rules haven't changed since the 1800s? That's where the Duttons come in. The family ranch is older now, weathered and scarred, but still standing. The matriarch and patriarch, maybe the grown children of Jacob and Kara Dutton, are grappling with a world that's shifting beneath their boots. One Dutton son, the quiet one who's good with horses but restless under the Montana sky, enlists. He doesn't just go overseas. He parachutes into Normandy. His letters home are sparse, sometimes just a few lines scrawled in pencil, but every word is a lifeline. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, his brother is holding down the fort, contending with government cattle requisitions, drought, and the arrival of war refugees working the land. This prequel wouldn't just be about war in the trenches. It would be about war on the home front. Rangers struggling to maintain independence in a country that's rapidly industrializing. Native tribes pushing back against being erased. Women stepping up to lead in the absence of their sons and husbands. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the Duttons, too proud to change, too stubborn to fold. Sheridan would likely introduce a formidable female lead, someone like a young grandmother figure, a Dutton woman who's all grit and grace, running the ranch while the men are away. Think of her as a blend of Margaret from 1883 and Kara from 1923, with the steel spine of a wartime Rosie the Riveter and the heart of a lioness. She has to make impossible decisions, ration supplies, hide the truth from her children, maybe even take a life to protect the land. And let's not forget the broader landscape. The war brings a flood of new people into Montana. Some are heroes, some are drifters, and some are spies. Yes, I said spies. There's a rich vein to tap here. German POWs were actually housed in camps across the American West during World War II. What if one ends up escaping and hiding on the Dutton ranch? Maybe he's not what he seems. Maybe the Duttons aren't either. And Sheridan never shies away from race or politics. The 1940s in Montana wasn't just about white cowboys. It was about black soldiers returning from war to a country that didn't recognize their service. It was about Japanese Americans forcibly relocated to internment camps. It was about broken treaties with Native peoples as their lands were carved up yet again in the name of progress. In this new chapter, we see the Duttons face the consequences of their ancestors' choices. Land taken, promises broken, alliances forged in desperation. There would be flashbacks to 1923, tying together the threads of loyalty, betrayal, and land ownership. Maybe the Duttons find themselves at odds with the government, again, as Washington tries to build a military installation near Yellowstone. Maybe they're forced to choose between keeping the land and keeping the peace. And let's be real, this wouldn't be a Yellowstone story without violence. There'd be shootouts in the snow, bar fights under the flicker of neon lights, and family betrayals that cut deeper than any bullet. Maybe the returning soldier Dutton comes home shell-shocked and doesn't recognize the ranch or himself anymore. Maybe he's changed so much that the land feels like a stranger. Maybe his brother has been keeping secrets. Maybe his mother isn't the woman he left behind. All of this could culminate in a powerful, emotional reckoning. The Duttons would have to decide, once again, what they're willing to lose to keep the land, and what they're willing to do to each other. Stylistically, Sheridan would lean into noir tones. Imagine sun-faded Kodachrome visuals, swing music bleeding through a crackling radio, and a dust-choked main street where the past and future collide. There'd be new technology, trucks instead of horses, tractors replacing plows, but the land would still demand the same price: blood, sweat, and soul. This 1944 prequel wouldn't just connect the dots between 1923 and Yellowstone, it would deepen them. It would show us how the Dutton legacy was nearly lost in the fires of a world war, and how it was reforged by the hands of those who refused to let it die. If Sheridan wants to tell a story that bridges the gap between old-school grit and modern warfare, this is the time. And if history has taught us anything, it's that the Duttons don't back down. Not in 1883, not in 1923, and definitely not in 1944.